There's a famous quote from Winston Churchill: "Democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried." And I think there are many Americans who seem to extend this belief to capitalism, that there is no better alternative out there, if it even occurs to us to question the capitalistic system in the first place. But what if a better system does exist, but is simply not yet widely known? There's some great video essays on YouTube that break down how and why capitalism is about to die.
I even ended up getting hired as a freelance consultant for venture capital firms. Me, a musician.
Other essays on this topic are by men coming from the academic world.
Almost every week on this channel, I will critique some aspect or consequence of the capitalist economic model. And almost every week, I'll see a well-intentioned comment saying something to the effect of, "Capitalism might be flawed or even downright cruel, but at the end of the day, it's the best we've got. After all, hasn't everything else been tried and failed?"
Wealth inequality could collapse society in the space of a decade.
Don't get me wrong, I really appreciate these essays, and they're identifying the problem and backing it up with significant data in most cases. But I haven't seen a video yet that is offering a practical solution. And these conversations also aren't touching on the spiritual foundation of what's going on Earth at this time, particularly as it relates to the healthy rebalancing of feminine energy, which is available to people of all genders, but has been suppressed on Earth and therefore in all of us for millennia. So I want to add my voice to the conversation because I feel that I can bring those two things especially. I've not only pitched VC, venture capitalists myself, and raised some funding from them, I've also been asked for advice from VC when considering other deals. Before that, I worked as a stock trader in Chicago and then on Wall Street beginning in April 2008. So literally just as the stock market was beginning to crash. And then before that, my first job out of undergrad was in the industry that became known as subprime mortgage lending. I totally didn't understand what that was going to come to mean when I was 22, and I don't think anybody else did either. But that meant that the company that I was working for, which unsurprisingly no longer exists, contributed to this breakdown in capitalism that nearly caused a global economic collapse. So I've been deep in the bowels of capitalism, kind of on the crest of this wave that I think is bringing about its impending destruction. I've seen its dysfunction firsthand in the arenas where it performed worst, as well as supposedly where it performs best. And I experienced capitalism's discrimination in these worlds. I was always the only female trader, or one of like 2 female traders, at every firm I worked. At one firm, I eventually found out I was paid a lower base salary than all the men who started at the same time I did, despite the fact that I had a better educational background, I already had experience as a profitable trader, and I ultimately outperformed them. Later on, once I founded Seeds, which is working to transcend capitalism, I faced an even more extreme version of that discrimination when it seemed necessary to try and raise funds from VC. Because over 98% of VC funding goes to men, even though reams of data show that women outperform men in this area as well. VC, by the way, is the industry that created Elon Musk by funding him, and I would argue convinced him that he was a genius. And so Musk brings me to the second lens I want to use when adding to this conversation, the spiritual one. Why is Elon Musk so prominent right now? Why is it suddenly so clear to more people than ever before that he isn't a genius, that he is inept in many important ways, and that he's doing very bad things in multiple different arenas? I think the answer to that is that from a spiritual standpoint, it's because capitalism is about to die. And in order to achieve that, it makes sense that the biggest beneficiary of capitalism in its history would be ignorantly and willy-nilly exposing its corruption and its failings. So in this video, we're going to talk practically about what we can do through the failure of capitalism and beyond it, as well as the spiritual energies contributing to this collapse. I really hope that sharing these thoughts is going to provide some comfort in what are obviously very challenging times. So I practice Vipassana meditation, which is supposed to be the specific practice that Buddhas use to get out of the misery of this. And there's this idea in the text that the clock of Vipassana has struck as of, I think, like 1955. And we have seen this surge in Vipassana centers that are available around the world that allow you to sit a course for free. I'll put the link in the description. But related to that, I found that capitalism itself, this idea that the vast majority of us have to have a job to trade our time for money in order to get the money that we need to survive, that seems to be perhaps the biggest blocker to those who want to learn about Vipassana and want to practice Vipassana. So in a spiritual sense, because the clock of Vipassana has struck, I think that means that the way this world is organized is also shifting to support more and more people as more and more people realize that they're interested in practicing Vipassana meditation. In an astrological sense, I've talked about this in other videos, but as many of you know, we moved away from Capricorn energies and into Aquarian energies very recently. And Capricorn was about top-down structures and hierarchy and money, and Aquarius is much more free-flowing, it's much more egalitarian, it's about decentralization, whereas Capricorn was very much about centralization. So we're seeing those top-down systems faltering in government as well as in the money system itself. And we're moving away from that idea of a money system that is defined by self-interest alone into something much more humanitarian and about supporting the greater good at the same time as it supports the good of the individual. And the rise of feminine energy is happening on Earth as we speak as well, so that that energy can come back into balance with a healthy form of masculine energies in a higher vibratory way. The father of the old economic system, Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations about 250 years ago, which means that his ideas have also been going through a Pluto return, by the way. The system as he defined it was solely about self-interest. He has this famous quote, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest." And he wrote that as he lived with his mother for the majority of his adult life, which meant that she was the one providing his dinner. He expected his dinner from her, and we can assume he probably wasn't paying her for that dinner, and that she probably wasn't providing it to him exclusively out of her own self-interest. She probably loved her child and wanted to make sure that he was eating. So that means that the so-called father of modern economics was so oblivious to the value of feminine contribution, even when it was shown through his own mother, that it's entirely excluded from the economic system that he's credited with essentially designing. And it's really past time for us to outgrow that idea and start recognizing feminine contribution for its true value. And I think the spiritual energies that are on Earth right now are helping to rectify that. So in a practical sense, we need to transcend this for-profit, non-profit binary, which is baked into the old economic system, needless to say, and is only necessary because Adam Smith articulated this idea that people only do things out of their own self-interest, or more specifically, men only do that. We know that's not true. It's especially not true for female people. I know tons of women who put others before themselves habitually all the time, sometimes to a fault. That can show itself in a wounded feminine way. So that's another thing we're healing right now if that's present. It's something that I've seen show up in myself. And so in order to transcend that nonprofit, for-profit binary, the seeds ecosystem allows giving people, generous people, to build wealth through helping others. When you help someone through seeds, you receive seeds cryptocurrency in thanks at an equal or greater value than the value of your gift at the time that you gave it. And in that way, your gift is net neutral in a monetary sense, or maybe you even got a little bit extra if you chose a recurring gift option, for example. But then if and when seeds go up in market value, you can actually build wealth because you were kind. To be clear, this is not an ad for seeds. Capitalism has us so conditioned to think that everything is an ad that it's actually been kind of frustrating when I'm trying to describe this sort of larger philosophical idea, because people, unsurprisingly, will assume that. Seeds is a social revolution. It's here to help all of us elevate out of the muck, the dysfunction in the old way. And that's what I'm here to share, to connect with like-minded folks who know the old system isn't working, but just had no idea that there was something else available to use instead. Seeds is also decentralized, so it's aligning with these Aquarian energies. It uses blockchain technology, which is Aquarian as well. And Seeds makes it possible for everyone who participates in the ecosystem to grow a bigger pie. In a practical sense, that can allow us to transcend the zero-sum transactional manufactured scarcity that I saw so often, like when I was a pro stock trader, for example, in that I realized that literally if I made $1 while trading, it meant that somebody else lost that dollar. And again, it was a manufactured sense of scarcity because money is not scarce. Governments are printing it constantly. Money is not real, it's a made-up concept. And the ridiculousness in that is something that we're really seeing a light shined on, again, because of the increased visibility of Elon Musk with all of his antics. Like, it just shows how silly and meaningless that a person like that has apparent control of so much money. And then again, because Seeds is designed to empower generous, giving people to build wealth because they helped others, because they were kind. A system like that is intended not to create more Elon Musk, who we can certainly argue largely built wealth through taking from others. And finally, Seeds also allows us to ask for help when we need it and to receive that as a gift from from the community, from the seeds community. And the idea there is at scale to free us from being forced to trade our time, which is finite, in order to get money, which again is made up and distributed in weird, bizarre, clearly unfair ways, so that we're not forced to enrich an oligarchs like Elon Musk. The idea there is that you can redeem a seed, ask for the funds that you need and receive them, and then focus on creating what you're truly meant to uniquely bring to this world, because you're almost certainly not here to work a 9-to-5 job that you despise. As we've been moving through this tumultuous time right now, there have been many of what I perceive to be toxic masculine energies trying to come at seeds, I think even more aggressively in recent months. I was robbed not too long ago. I made a video about it if you're interested, and I think that was part of this wounded masculine attack. And my spiritual sense is that that's really happening because of the role that seeds is meant to play through this transition with the fall of capitalism and then beyond it. So I want to invite good, giving, generous people who understand that the old system isn't working anymore, and who maybe even haven't known that you could search for something better because it didn't even occur to you that maybe something better existed at this time. I think we're going to be seeing a chaotic next few years, but what's on the other side of that I think is going to be so much more beautiful and supportive and peaceful and fun also. Like, when is the last time that you really had fun? And seeds can help us to get there in a practical way that's working today. So I really hope you'll check it out. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.